I thought he was in bad shape, not fatal condition. Some folks came along in a truck and was going to drive us to try and get a helicopter. We'd already called for a helicopter, and we were in the bed of the truck, and Keith was laying on the lap, and he was kind of talking, and I was kind of joking a little bit. I said, we're going to end up in some trauma center out here while you heal up for 6 or 8 months, and we're going to be stuck in West Texas for the next 6 or 8 months and eating horrible food. And he took his last breath and died while we were discussing and joking. And second time, I guess, having somebody die there kind of while I'm holding him. I still thought he was probably going to make it. I thought he's hurt really bad, but he's going to be fine. And when I walked in, they walked out and handed me his badge and his wallet and his wedding ring. And I'm like, man, why are you handing me these? Is he going into surgery? And they said, no, he didn't make it, man. He didn't make it. And I think it would have been different if I didn't have his son with me, but I didn't know what to tell him or how to tell him. That helped me more than I can say, because that's important. Being a companion officer after somebody's had to take a human's life and you get a phone call to go sit in a squad car with them, go freaking be a good friend, man. That's what they need. That helped me. That helped me more than I can say. Each year we remember the fallen from the previous 12 months, and although it's beautiful, I love getting to plan it, but I end up an emotional wreck the whole way through it as we honor it. It shocks the conscious to see that many names and photos and young faces scroll across that screen every year. Shocks the conscious. I wish the community could see that every year.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
The definition of a Texas peace officer is defined as a law enforcement officer within the state of Texas are considered peace officers. All Texas peace officers are required to obtain and maintain a commission through the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, TCO. Being a Texas peace officer is a calling. This great state has plenty of incredible examples of outstanding lawmen in its history. Today's guest embodies what it means to be a true Texan and a true peace officer. His family has dedicated their lives to serving. In the early 1990s, a legendary Dallas detective helped put away a true Dallas serial killer, known as the Texas Eyeball Killer. This detective also worked on the Pastor Walker Rayleigh case that still haunts this city, and that detective. I'm speaking of longtime Dallas PD detective Stan McNear. Today's guest is a spawn of this great peace officer. He's a Marine, former Garland PD detective, third generation law enforcement. Strong advocate for all officers across the country. It's my honor to welcome on Clint McNear. Clint, thanks for joining the ATO podcast.
Glad to be on.
I want to introduce a special guest co-host. He's a very close friend of Clint, so this was kind of just seemed like it just should happen. It seemed natural.
Right.
He brings 30 years of law enforcement to the table and specializes in ICAT cases, internet crimes against children. What's that, you ask? It's some of the worst shit you can deal with. And these detectives, God bless them, because I couldn't do that job. I've seen some of the cases, and I can't imagine working that type of case against true victims that can't defend themselves. Detective Tony Godwin thank you for joining us. I want you to tell the listener a little bit about yourself and also talk about your podcast you got going.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I've been listening to y'all's podcast now for, I don't know, over a month or so since I learned about it. I didn't know about it in the beginning. Clint told me about it, and just the opportunity to come and hang out with my buddy and share in his glory because it's well deserved. But I've been with my agency for 30 years. I've specialized in ICAC for the last 17 or so. And you're right, it's the most horrible shit you can imagine seeing on a daily basis, but it's rewarding in the sense that you get to put people away that really need to be put away. And so
can I tell you that Tony, for the viewers with this being audio only, is the sexiest 13-year-old little girl
guaranteed
that you will ever see.
He's got the voice too.
Oh, let me tell you, it's hard as hell getting in those clothes, but once I get in them, it's Katie bar the door. But
his calves are nice. He's got nice calves.
Some not, and especially in heels. No.
I expect a few ribbings today. But, you did mention our podcast, and thank you for that. Me and my podcast partner Brandon, we've been doing our podcast. It's called Catfish Cops, and we do a bunch of different things. We kind of started out with a focus on doing case studies, talking about arrests that we've made. Cases that we've made. Everywhere we go, people are always like, oh, tell us about this, tell us about that. And so it kind of spawned into the podcast. We didn't really know anything about it. We kicked it off, and we've been going now for about 2 years. We just bridged 100,000 downloads. Mm-hmm. I think we're around 80 or 81 episodes, something like that. So really proud of it. It's called Catfish Cops. It's on every platform you can imagine where you can find it. We have transitioned also into more of an education role. We play a really big role with wanting to educate the public. We want to educate kids and parents about what they need to be looking for online, especially when they're dealing with their own kids, being connected, and training. We're all about training. We go all over the country. We go all over the world to teach cops how to do the job we do. I trained Brandon how to do the job several years ago, and he took off like a banshee, and he's been blowing and going since. We both do computer forensics on our side of the house. He's phenomenal. He's like absolutely one of the top 2 or 3 forensic people I know, and he really just shines to it. So I appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to.
And don't feel free to give Clint some shit because you got more stories in your bag than probably anybody.
I have no issue with that.
So the podcast it's not about fishing for cat.
No, it is
fly
not.
Fish or
it's definitely not about fishing.
Okay.
Our very first inquiry from when we kicked off the website and email was a guy asking me about a specific fish. Hey, are you going to talk about where to find? What lakes to find this fish? And I was like, wrong topic, man, wrong kind of fishing.
Yeah, but listen anyway. Maybe we'll talk about fish at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. But
we're just talking about horrible shit, not fish.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride. So not for the faint of heart, not really kid friendly. If it is kid friendly, we let you know right at the beginning. Otherwise, be careful.
Well, that type of offense, there's no way to make it kid friendly. And actually, I was listening to one of the episodes the other day on the way to pick up my daughter from school.
Oh, boy.
and I turned it off when I got her in. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sweet Carmen did not need to hear about sorry assholes that are online, and I monitor her social media, or not social media, but her Roblox and all that crap. I got it pretty locked down because I know. I talked to our Dallas ICAC detectives, and I'm not sure you probably know quite a few of them.
I know every one of them.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. Jason Paulson, shout out Jason. He's a big listener, and he just left ICAC and went to sex assaults.
Oh, really?
So he went from one frying pan into the other.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, but I don't know if that says a lot about him, but his interest. But he's a
good desire to
Yeah.
put those people away. That's the satisfaction. That's what I like about it. Putting them away where they're not going to get their hands on a kid.
I commend Tony's work. I couldn't do it. I could not be exposed to it. I'm just not built for it. And he always was really good at reeling them in, and I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know about it, but I like to be there when he would go, hey, you need to go to this location because the guy's showing up thinking he's meeting me, and you need to be there to drag him out to the car. And I'd rather clean him than catch and clean than do, because it takes – I couldn't do it for a month, much less 17 years.
Well,
I
it's
commend the
about
people
reached
that are built
its
for it.
it's about reached its max. I'm definitely looking for my exit strategy here because there's only so much of that stuff you can focus on.
Well, even for just mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, really, we're gonna get into emotional wellness of officers, and anybody that listens to this podcast knows that we take an approach. We tell some cool kick-ass stories, and we talk about some stupid shit, and we make bad jokes, but we do try to bring to the forefront the topic of mental wellness with officers.
Yeah.
Long overdue.
Long overdue. All right, Clint, you ready to get into this?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to start off. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Plano. Dad worked for DPD and didn't want to raise kids in Dallas, and moved to Plano. It was like 15 or 16,000 folks, and that's where I grew up through high school.
Yeah, for the listener, Plano is just north of Dallas. I mean, hell, Randy, you live out there now.
Yeah, I've been there since, oh my gosh, almost 20 years now I've been in Plano.
Yeah, Plano at the time, it gets gone through different ups and downs. But it was at one time. I remember it was like almost like a Highland Park-esque.
Yeah,
it was a nicer part of a suburb of Dallas, and now it's good size now.
Well, it's landlocked by everything because McKinney and Allen and Frisco and Dallas, it can't grow anymore. And it used to be the model city with the way the city planning. There's been studies on it. The way they have the town laid out, it's really nice. So, where'd you go to? You Wildcat?
Supposed to have been. I struggled fitting in due to having a police family. We didn't fit in. We lived on the west side, but that was not our socioeconomic lifestyle that we lived. And I didn't fit in with kids driving Porsches. When I pulled into school in my farm truck, I didn't jive too well there, so I transferred to East. Live right by Plano. Should have been Wildcat, but I transferred to Plano East where I fit in a little bit better.
It's a little bit different now because I think with Plano West opening, you probably would have been fine. You'd be fine now at Plano Senior High.
Yeah. Back then, man, it was awesome, though. Plano was like Plano, USA. It wasn't near as big as it is, and it was a great place to grow up.
Well, everything's grown just north of Dallas. I mean, look at Frisco. I mean, when I went to high school, I grew up in Dallas and moved out to Little Quinlan, Texas for high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we played Frisco, and they have since changed the team nickname, and I'm not going to say
they're the Raccoons now.
Yeah. But they have changed the name. But we played them. They were 3A, barely 3A, and now, good Lord. I mean, you go up there now, and it is. I mean, you got the Jerry Jones Star there, and it is that big mall, and they got the Rangers. Randy was
the Star.
Yeah, we had the Star with the Rangers, the minor league.
Oh, the Rough Riders.
The Rough Riders are up there. Yeah,
the PGA is going to be opening up there. I mean, Frisco is growing, and it's crazy. Do you remember how many high schools were in Frisco when you were going to Plano?
There was one, and
now
now
there's 16 high schools.
Holy!
Yeah. Oh my God!
There was actually a Ford dealership and 2 brothels, and that would pretty much comprise
that's what Frisco is known for. That, Joe.
Really?
Sure, you find that interesting.
They had,
no, that's very interesting.
The 121 Hot Tub Club, and they had like 3 brothels and a Ford dealership. Was the extent of Frisco, Texas, USA.
If one was wanting to go to these brothels, are they still?
No, they're gone.
Oh, they're gone.
Yes,
I would suspect they're gone. In high school, we would get on a payphone and prank call up there and ask them to read the menu to us.
Yeah.
Then we would giggle and hang up and get embarrassed.
They might have something with catfish on the menu.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
I knew Tony looked familiar.
Yeah. What was it like growing up with Stan McNear as your father?
Looking back now, you only know what you know as a kid, and I thought everybody lived the way I did, and I'd be hiding in my room when I was 13 trying to talk to girls on the phone at 3 a.m. on Friday night, and the phone would click, and I would click over, and it would say, "This is Dallas PD Dispatch needing homicide detective McNear. There's been a police shooting." I thought everybody kind of lived a normal life. Our house was full of DPD partaking in choir practice on the weekends, and I thought that was probably how most kids lived. Looking back on it now, it was a very different lifestyle, but you
didn't know any better.
I didn't know any better, and it was my dad would come out to Little League, coach pitch, with his suit and badge and gun on and pitch my Little League game and then go get back in his old Chrysler and head back to Dallas. And that was kind of the life I thought most folks lived that.
How long was he on DPD?
He started in 67 and retired in 01.
Wow, that's a long
Do you
time.
think our paths crossed with his?
Oh yeah, we've been up there, and I mean, I'm sure Randy.
I don't remember the name.
Yeah, I know. I remember the name, but I can't remember a case. We were going up to homicide and SIU a lot. And,
Well, it's not like you could miss Stan. He is quite a large character.
Well, I'd like to
Physically imposing.
Get him on here, and Clint, you come back as a guest co-host. I think that would be.
I've got to find a photo. He was on the DPA board like in the 70s, and they had these beautiful sport coats. I thought my dad had won the Masters growing up because he had this photo of him in this like mauve jacket or baby blue.
I think they were blue with and our old logo is pretty neat because it has it's blue and red and it has a justice level on it. It's pretty neat.
That's cool.
We've had them on a coin one time, and I've tried to get these guys to get them, but
we should do like a throwback. Like the Cowboys throwback jersey, a throwback DPA.
They're like a powder blue or sky
Yeah,
blue. I thought he won the Masters for about 10 years growing up because he had this great-looking sport coat, but turns out he was on the DPA board in the 70s.
Wow. Well, you know that, Clint, I'd like to get him on, and I know he worked on some high-profile cases, and he worked under Captain Fritz, right?
Your previous guest, Elmer Boyd, is who trained him, I think in 70 or 71. That's who trained him. That's who got Dad into the Masons and
that's cool.
Walked him through. Dad got his 50-year Mason Masonic Lodge pin last week and talked a lot about Elmer Boyd and his mentorship and Captain Fritz and the leadership they had back then.
Yeah, it was. I literally just today I posted a pic of me standing in front of the original homicide and robbery door frame from 1963. It's down in a storage unit inside headquarters,
like door 330 or
317.
317.
Yeah, it was.
I grew up running the halls there, man. As a toddler, I'd go down there and we'd take Dad dinner, and I didn't know. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah, listener, I'm just showing the picture that's actual. It's in a storage unit right now, and we need to get that out on display for people because it was really cool because I actually have a picture posted of that same door with two Dallas officers from the day Kennedy was killed and Officer J.D. Tippett was killed, and they're standing in front of that door, and that whole door and frame is just sitting there.
Wow.
Yeah, tell me when people wouldn't come out of the woodworks to get a picture next to that.
No kidding.
So it's pretty incredible. But, you're a third generation law enforcement. Can you explain, we know about your father now, can you explain that and what does that mean to you?
It runs deep. My grandfather worked for the sheriff's department forever. Dad.
What sheriff department?
Fannin County in Bonham, Texas, up towards the Red River. My uncle retired from Colleyville PD. Dad was the old school, lived, breathed law enforcement. There was only cops in my house. His friends were cops. His hobbies were, police related. He retired and I was in capers, and they were going up through the New England states, retired. And I was working capers, and we were having a bunch of bank robberies at the time. And he called every morning at 7. What do you got working? You told me about a bank robbery yesterday. What have you done on that? What do you have? And I'm like, go sleep in and look at the leaves changing in New England. And, I was wanting to know that you had a murder 2 weeks ago. Where are you at on that? And
wow,
just that's who he was. And I pushed back on that in high school. I wasn't a great student. But I guess I knew all along. I knew where I was headed.
Where you were going to end up as in law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
At what point you said so in high school you knew that you were going to get into law enforcement?
I knew my trajectory was I was either going to be riding in the back of a police car or driving one, and I wasn't going to go to college, and so I joined the Marines as an MP. So that I could ensure I was driving one, not riding in the back seat of one, is kind of where my path started. It just felt super natural once I started down that path.
Once you got in the Marines, can you talk a little bit about that, how that went?
Yeah, it was good. I went in and was in boot camp when Shield and Storm was going on. So just missed Desert Shield, Desert Storm, with it being the 100-hour ground war. And it was a good experience, learned a lot. Realized I should have probably selected a different MOS, another career field. I loved the Marines. Being an MP was difficult, trying to police your own, and they didn't appreciate being policed. But it did a lot to prepare my maturity and my focus and my drive to go to Garland.
Well, and also it probably, you said it matured you, but also gave you a lot of structure, right?
Yeah,
that you needed.
much
you needed,
needed.
And you know, and we're all immature at that age, and you're sitting there trying to police other very immature kids. We're all kids at that age.
Yeah.
Doing
Well,
that.
and officers, I had a force recon captain threatening to whip my ass, and we had a large standoff in the E Club one night, and him threatening to whip my ass, and we were going to go down fighting because I knew I was going to take one, but he misunderstood what my role was there, and I told him I'd much rather be drinking beer with you, I promise you, but I'm just trying to do what I'm told. And it was a lot of difficult situations that I would rather have just been a Marine.
Yeah. Was there ever a point where you thought about staying in there and making a career out of the military?
At the time, no, because I was chomping at the bit to go drive a police car and put people in jail. Looking back, it would have been a great opportunity. All of my family, everybody in my family's been in the military. My son is right now. My dad, I have an uncle that was a 3-star Marine lieutenant general. It would have been an awesome opportunity, but I was still trying to find my way. I turned 50 last week, and I'm still trying to figure this out. My whole life's been falling forward. I've been lucky to fall forward. So I don't reflect on it too much, but the Marines would have been awesome.
I think it worked out pretty well, though, for you, though.
It's
You know,
been
you've
good.
had a great career. So when you decided to finally apply for law enforcement, where did you apply, and what was that process for you?
I got out immediately and started applying. And, man, if you recall, like late 80s, early 90s, a police test, there'd be 600, 700, 800 people. Got hired in Plano in the jail. I worked there for 2.5 years. It was relayed to me I may have been a bit aggressive for Plano's style. And so I started looking around. Had some folks from Garland reach out and said that my style may fit Garland better than Plano's.
Yeah.
And went to Garland in 94.
Okay. Was there a time you wanted to apply for Dallas, or did you?
You know, when I first got out, initially I did pretty bad because 60s, 70s, and 80s, if you were DPD or LAPD, I mean, you were almost a Hollywood movie star. They were the premier global police departments anywhere in the world, those two were. And Dad talked to me about some options, and I kind of regretted a little bit at the time. Looking back now, it was a really good decision. I would have lived in his shadow. I still live in his shadow. I was testifying in federal court last year as an expert witness on a death case, and as soon as I said my name, this federal judge leans over and says, in front of a jury, "Are you little McNear?" "Yes, ma'am." "I've known your dad for 40 years. I've drank beer with your dad. I've known him for 40 years. You're little McNear." And I'm like, "Yes, ma'am."
Yeah.
Might have helped your testimony. Or
You know what? Yeah. You're like, well, I'm here to testify now as Big
Yeah.
McNear.
I would have probably been little McNear my whole life at Dallas. And I still was. My very first time I went to read a grand jury, I was so nervous. And I got up there, and I'm trying to even remember my name to get up there to say it. And I tell them who I am and where I'm at. And
They
this
did a double take.
very attractive prosecutor goes, "Are you little McNear? Your dad's handsome. You're little McNear?" Well, of course, then all the shit went out the window. I couldn't remember my name, who I was,
Yeah.
what I was trying to read. And it was fun, though. It was a good opportunity.
What was the size of Garland Garland PD when you hired on?
I don't know that we've changed. I don't know that
Same.
it's changed in 25 years. It was, I think we were around 330-ish, and I would imagine today we're around 350-ish.
We had on the great Lieutenant Dan Colasanto.
Oh yeah, Dino.
And he in the SWAT world, his training's legendary, and he's he's an amazing guy. But can you talk more about Garland PD and the area that it's in, and also just talk about that city?
Yeah. So I grew up in Plano, which was, like Randy said, kind of the up and coming. It was newer community, newer homes, upper middle class to upper class. Garland is an older community. The socioeconomic condition there is not as good. We border Dallas to the due east, whereas Plano's to the north. It was an outstanding place in the 90s to do police work. Fridays and Saturday nights, there would be shootings holding and stabbings holding, and the movie Colors had came out, late 80s, Sean Penn, and so everybody literally in Texas thought they were an LAPD, an LA gang member.
LA Bloods and Crips, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We had shootings in our parks with gang members shooting each other all the time. It was a great place in the early 90s to do police work.
Well, I just recorded Major Leroy Quigg, and he spent 30-something years on DPD, and he has spent 20 involved either as supervisor or as a detective in the gang unit. And he started the gang unit in Dallas not long after Colors came out. And we talked in depth about what that movie did to glorify those and everybody wanted to mimic them. I remember I grew up in Dallas, and I went to like Griner and Atwell, and those are in Oak Cliff, and then Sunset High School. And when I was there, I left Sunset and went to Quinlan, and I was like, I was like I went to Europe. You know?
Like you're on
so
the moon.
without the British accents. But then those gangs, we had like all these different offshoots and wannabes. We had G-men and Ducky Boys and all this bullshit. But it was all because a lot of spurred by that movie. And it went from the West Coast, and it spread east.
It spread east like the plague, man. It was the early 90s. It was insane. I think every kid under the age of 19 thought they were a legit LA gang member and wanted to try and emulate and live up to that behavior, and it was busy.
It was a damn good movie, though. I mean, it really was a good movie.
Yeah.
Robert Duvall,
he's awesome.
He's good in anything.
When did you and Tony meet? Can you talk about that, both of y'all?
Yeah, like we met in the academy.
Holy shit, really? So y'all classmates or just in?
We are classmates, yeah.
Days long together.
We were one of the, I think we still are, matter of fact, the biggest class that's ever been pushed through Garland.
What's the size on that?
We started with
31.
31 and lost one really quickly, and the overwhelming majority made it through. Lost a few during FTO, but yeah, we've been running and gunning since day one of the academy.
That's awesome. What is your badge, Tony?
299.
299. What was yours?
248.
Okay. Well, you got some good seniority. I mean, Randy's don't tell me 7487. Yeah, I had a little bit of seniority on him. I'm 82.
Yeah,
Randy and I were classmates.
We call them zip codes now because the numbers are.
Oh my god!
Yeah, the ones we have here, they're 7. No, they're 5-digit.
Yeah, ours are stupid long now.
Well, I talked about. When did I talk? Oh, I talked about it in front of that. We went to that True Crime Podcast Festival, and it was really cool. In front of the panel, and they were asking about how short-handed Dallas is, and I said, well, 2 years ago they had the largest academy class. It was 81 people in academy class, and they were packed in there like sardines, right?
Wow.
And now it's so hard to get people to want to do this job. They are literally starting an academy class, I think this week, that has 17 people.
Oh,
well, there's one that graduated last Friday, 19.
Yeah, so man.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
But I think everybody all over the whole country is seeing and experiencing the same thing. Like, it's interesting from a standpoint, because I teach in our academy quite a bit and in lots of other academies. And one of the questions I ask is like, hey, do you see yourself here in 20 years? And the very common theme right now in the last several years is no. Most of them say.
Why do most of them? What do they say? Why?
And I ask them. I say, "Hey, show me hands. Who thinks you're going to be here in 20 years?" And a couple people will raise their hand, but the overwhelming majority will not. And then I'll say, "Okay, well, what's the next level? 10 years, few more. 5 years is where the majority of them put a hand up. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see how it's going to go. And then if I don't like it, I'm going to go do something else. And then that always gets the return question, did you think you would be here in 20 years? And I said, absolutely yes, 100%. I said, I don't know what I would have been doing or where I'd be, but I could have told you I'd be here for 30 years. I knew that when I took the job.
Well, I said in my intro that being a peace officer is a calling, and I think now it's a different. Calling is different than whenever we went through. I really believe that, and I don't know. I can't put my finger on why that would be, but just some of the numbers don't lie. It is hard to get people to want to do this profession. It's even harder to get them to stay.
Right.
I'm wondering if law enforcement's going to become like a military enlistment. Guys will sign up and be like, I'll give my community 5, and then I'm going to go, do a corporate gig or go start my family.
Well, a lot of agencies are doing incentives now, like signing bonuses, things like that.
We had a $10,000 signing bonus for all, and that went away.
It's been going on for the past 20 years here.
Yeah, but shit, even then, it's crazy because there's so many people that want to go federal, or they want to just go to another department. They'll go to a different part of town. They'll go to or that pays more than our city. And I can't say I blame them when Randy and I started. I mean, we were eking by.
We lost two people to Garland.
Oh yeah, Alberto Irizarry and
Brian Christian.
Yeah.
Oh, I was on the phone with Brian Christian all weekend.
Hey, he's actually going to come on this podcast. He
is a freaking rock star.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, so a family member's house got burglarized last Friday morning in Princeton. They called me that morning and said, "Hey, my laptop's pinging on the Garland-Richardson Plano border. You got anybody?" I said, "Let me go." So I called Brian Christian. He's like, "Man, I'm at my desk. I'll get somebody in or out up there." He calls me back. "Screw that. I'm rolling." So he calls me back. He goes, "Hey, it's a large apartment complex, man. I'm not going to be able to find it." I said, "All right." He goes, "Man, I'm sorry." He goes, "The only thing here is a chick sitting in a car." I said, "Well, the computer was pinging at McDonald's for 20 minutes, and now it's pinging there. And there's a gray laptop and golf clubs and all that." And he's like, "Man, I ain't got nothing, dude, other than a chick sitting in a car." He goes, "I may just jump out on her." He texts me in 2 seconds. "I got her. She's on a gray laptop eating McDonald's."
Damn. No, I love Brian. I ran into him actually on the Riverwalk when we were out there for the the TMPA and FOP conference just a few weeks ago.
He's a rock star, man.
No, he was so quiet in the academy. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
But he's actually going to send me a bio, and we're going to set up a recording. And
good.
I'm excited to get him on. Berto and I, we still run it, and I know his wife Teresa forever. So
good people,
very good people.
Your point about calling the last interview board at Garland, I was allowed to sit on. I asked this kid, "Hey man, what made you want to do this job?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know. I got let go from my last one and saw your ad." And I thought he was going to go, "I'm just kidding, man." And I said, "No, really, how come you're here today?" And he goes, "Well, I got fired 2 weeks ago, and I saw y'all's ad in the paper." I said, "So you've had no desire to go help people? You've had no desire to put bad guys in jail?" He's like, "No, I need benefits." Well, I went left a little bit, and I'm like, "You need to phone a friend, or you better find another final answer, because that answer doesn't fly in Garland that, I got fired 2 weeks ago, and I just need a paycheck and some." And I thought, man, and he was dead serious that there was no consideration for, and I'm thinking, man, you probably have less than a year career here once you find out that this isn't just collecting a paycheck and getting a little bit of medical benefits.
You do. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to this. There's a lot of this job that shit you put up with that you do not want to have, that most people couldn't stand, right?
Yeah.
Turn on the news, you'll see. But if you join a PD or you go into this profession in any form just because you're out job hunting and there's a Garland PD or Dallas PD's hiring, you might have a different experience than what you're expecting.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that go through the academy and get Dallas's training, and then boom, as soon as
go somewhere else.
Like the week after they graduate, they're gone. Yeah, that stings.
Yeah, that's terrible. There needs to be some level of loyalty, at least for some duration of time, I think.
Well, what kind of work did y'all gravitate to when y'all got out on the streets? It wasn't.
Really?
It wasn't internet crimes against
No,
children.
it was
that shit
not.
wasn't going on.
No, it was not then.
There was no internet. I don't think
We really chased all kinds of stuff. Like we loved to be in neighborhoods blacked out looking for burglars, and you know, I gravitated a lot towards DWI because it was a really good part time. Like it spent a lot of time in court. And so I was he hated DWIs, but I would just cash in on them because I was making so much money in overtime.
Yeah.
And but yeah, anything we could jump up a car chase or a foot chase, or you know, we purposely wanted to be on the late night shift, and we worked in neighboring districts and two-man a lot of nights, and you know, just we had a good time.
One of our academy mates, as soon as we got out of the academy, he was popping loads of dope on 30.
Yeah.
And you're all trying to find your niche. So I would go sit down there, and I'm stopping out of state plates. I couldn't find a roach in an ashtray.
Yeah.
And he's like, he would send out on the old CADs. We had the old black plastic LAPD. He'd send out, got 200 pounds eastbound, got $150,000 westbound, and like, I can't find a roach in a ashtray. And that's when he and I, early 90s, they were stealing Honda Accords like crazy, and he and I kind of ended up doing the car chase route and jumping up car burglars. And
what is their chase policy? Is it pretty strict now? I don't.
It's a lot more restrictive than it was, but it's not exclusively. You cannot.
Not like ours.
No. It's not like Dallas is.
Yeah.
We can still chase. It's just obviously limited with what you can chase for and what you know. Back when we were starting, you could chase till the wheels fell off.
Yeah,
we've chased
Randy and I too.
Texarkana and I mean
we went a lot.
Weatherford.
Well, I will say this though, they're a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun, but they are dangerous as hell. Yeah. I mean,
they're scary. They're scary as all.
They're very scary.
Get out too. Like I remember we chased a Viper one time down 30 down to 635 going off into Bulk Spring somewhere. That thing was shitting and getting. I bet it was doing 150 miles an hour. I've never had a Caprice go as fast as it did, and I was nowhere close to it. And I remember the hood of the Viper blew off and almost got me.
Just fly over the top.
And it made me swerve. Of course, I blew a tire out. I thought I was going to die. I'm like, please pick me up and bring an extra uniform because I've just soiled myself.
Yeah, I have to wear a diaper.
And somebody grab that hood because there's probably a VIN number on it.
I have to wear a diaper the rest of the shift.
There's a YouTube channel. I don't know the name of it, LHN or something, but it's Arkansas State Police. And it's funny you brought up chases. It's so counterintuitive to a lot of people. Arkansas State Police will pit you immediately. And I think that is, although a lot of people are afraid of pit maneuvers, but...
Can you describe that to the listener, what a pit maneuver
pursuit
is?
Intervention technique or pursuit intervention tactic. It's basically where you come alongside and you would bring the front quarter panel of your squad to the rear quarter panel of the suspect vehicle and use centrifugal force to put them into a spin. And once that rear end gets loose, centrifugal force takes over. I've watched probably 100 of these in the last 30 days. There's usually no damage. But they chose to run. It's a felony. And it immediately stops them from placing a single one more individual in danger or endangering someone's life. It's fascinating to watch because they do it well. They do it quick. And they have it down. And I think rather than bailing out and letting them continue to pursue, because oftentimes if we're not behind them, it doesn't mean they stop. Arkansas State Police does a really great job.
At really high speeds, too. I've seen one at like 80 miles an hour where they pitted a guy, and it just completely came to a guy spun around like crazy, but it ended right then and there. I'm like, yeah, I'll bet your brains are scrambled after you've done 27 360s.
And I think it's a good deterrent because you hear some of these places where there's zero pursuit policy. I'm not running in Arkansas, I can tell you that.
Is that the same as like that movie Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise? There's rubbing and racing. Remember that?
Yeah, there's a little rubbing.
Remember that, Randy?
If you ain't first, you last, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah.
Different movie.
Yeah, but still great. What was you talked about chasing stolen cars and basically everything? Garland has no shortage of crime, right? And all kinds of different crimes that detective there still working on that nobody else wants to do. What are some of the most interesting cases you worked on and in the field and also as a detective? I want to get into when you promoted to the detective, but what are some of a good war story that you encountered out there and how you dealt with it?
There was several good ones. I worked some really interesting police shootings that was the beginning of kind of the force science, understanding the human factors and performance, learning some of that early on, working some of the police shootings and how those affect officers was really interesting. Probably one of the probably one of the most fascinating murders I worked. Usually anything that's going to go bad as a detective is going to come in Friday at 3:00, like a bank robbery or a shooting. 3 Fridays out of 4, you can expect something's going to go sideways at 3:00 on Friday. Me and my partner were sitting there one day. The lieutenant came in and said, "Hey, there's 2 ladies that are investigators from the VA hospital here that think they know where a dead body is." And it's like 3:00 on a Friday, and I'm thinking, okay. So my partner comes back and goes, "Man, I don't think they're bullshitting. I think they've got something." So Mr. Giles had been a retired Air Force veteran, paid all of his bills on time, was a very responsible man, was single, lived in North Garland, worked for GE or Southwestern Bell, one of those phone companies that I think became AT&T later. Lived a really normal life. His house went into default with the VA, and when they got out there and knocked on the door because of his VA loan in default, the lady was super hinky, kind of acted weird. They talked to the neighbors and said that there was a 3 foot by 6 foot piece of concrete slab in the backyard, and that they hadn't seen Mr. Giles in a while. So we're still kind of thinking, okay, this there's no way. So we located a cadaver dog. Cadaver dog hit on the concrete slab, and ended up Mr. Giles had been killed, and she placed him in there. It was a lady that he had been communicating with, came in from Detroit, killed him, buried him in the backyard, took over his identity and his military retirement. While she was here in jail, she forged her paperwork and almost got herself released out of Lew Sterrett. Really interesting case. It was a fascinating case.
Damn, she's crafty.
She is
appropriate the man's life.
She is a black widow.
And she buried him in his own backyard.
Buried him in his backyard.
Damn.
Had been there a year in his backyard.
Were you a detective at the time?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your homicide?
Yes.
Okay. How many homicide detectives does Garland have? Or did they have the time?
It's fluctuated through the years. There was usually about 5.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time there was about 5.
Okay. Is that gone? And
Tony, it's generally now the unit itself is bigger, but it's split, into majors and PVU. But there's, I think there's probably 6 or 7 now, and they're hurting.
Stand in line with that problem.
They're hurting and need more bodies for sure.
Internet crimes against children. Is it just you and Brandon are the only?
And Brandon doesn't work at my agency. He works for another agency here in North Texas.
Okay.
So I do have a guy in the office with me, but his sole job is forensics. He was on the ICAC side for a while, but he's gravitated over towards just doing forensics. So
you're the only little girl in the office?
I'm the only little girl in the office, and have been for a long time.
When we have openings for that particular unit, do you have problems getting people to apply to that?
I had this conversation this morning with a guy who was like, because a lot of people coming around hearing the word that I'm looking for an exit strategy here in the next couple of years, and
we all are.
Yeah, and so there's like, hey, are they going to get you somebody, or are they going to open this up, or whatever? And I told them, I was like, a lot of people come to me and say, oh man, that seems like a cool job. Like I want to wear jeans, I want to grow a beard, I want to do surveillance, and then they see what it's all about, and then they're like, yeah, no, thanks anyway. So the short answer is it's on the radar to find a replacement. I am training a guy now that may have a good shot if he can prove his chops on the detective side. And,
you're grooming him.
I'm grooming him as we speak. and he's doing really well. He's doing really well. He's
manscaping him.
Yeah, he's a younger dude, and they're looking for some bit of longevity because we see the same thing in ours with people that get all trained up on forensics or a specialty, and then they pop smoke and go make money somewhere else, or chasing money. And so I've tried to tell them, I'm like, don't set your expectation to think that the next guy's going to last 17 like me, because it's rare.
Yeah.
Trust me, most people don't last that long,
Well, it may fluctuate too, whatever's going on in their personal life. When people may be single and not have kids, but when they have a kid, I would imagine that particular crime, it changes you. I mean, it changes you. You're not doing that type. It changes really everything, whether you're chasing dope or out getting in car chases, and it may make you think twice about the risk versus reward of this job.
Well, you get smarter the longer you've been in the career anyway, and you start to realize that even though in my mind I still feel like I'm 22 years old and I can conquer the world and jump over tall buildings, my 54-year-old body says, "No, fool, no, you can't."
Yeah, Clint and I were just talking about our backs just going to shit. Yeah. So we're struggling just sitting here to do this. Whenever you got to deal with a job and to cope with a job, what was your outlet to get over this? And how early on, looking back, do you feel you did a good job of it, or was it poor looking back of how you dealt?
I think my police lifestyle, I managed well. When my dad realized I was dead set sure going to be a cop, a couple of the things I remember him telling me over and over is don't become a part-time job whore. Do not get yourself in a bind where you spend your life working 40 hours a week at a part-time job and killing yourself and you're in debt. And I never worked a part-time job except for a few occasions. If somebody called me and the money was crazy, I might go do something on a Friday night or something. He told me, and several people told me when I was a young guy, find a hobby, find some friends that aren't cops. It's okay to actually know somebody that isn't a cop.
Yeah.
And I think I did that well. I've always had friendships outside the job. I was committed to the job 1,000,000%, and I hope that's a reputation I left behind is when I worked homicide or robbery, I was going to work it until there wasn't anything left to work it. But when I was done, I wanted to go travel or, go act stupid and cause a mel or go relax or whatever. What I didn't handle well was the self-care is navigating through that. And it's still a work in progress. I still preach to people about taking care of themselves, but I could have done a whole lot better job navigating through the career.
But, out of fairness, when we were young rooks coming up, it wasn't something you talked about. If you were to voice your opinion back then that, oh man, that scene really fucked me up or that thing really jacked me up, someone would call you a pussy and tell you, hey, suck it up, buttercup, get back in the game. And you would. And that's just what you did. But now, I'll tell you, it's completely different now. It's a complete 180 difference in how they do things now. We're
changing the trajectory. I mean, the Dallas PD just starting up a new wellness unit, and I'm a part of that. I've been working on it for several months, and now it's official, and it's finally rolled out. Everything's different. Even my perspective on it is different.
I need to put you in touch with our guy, Todd Jerry.
Please let me.
That is in his wheelhouse. Like, this guy lives, breathes, eats mental health and awareness for cops.
Yeah.
It's bizarre how much the pendulum has swung in that, because in the role I'm in now, I travel the state and into the country in some degree, but the state at agencies all the time. And some agencies are pretty advanced in their self-care, and some are not. And I could see the broad spectrum. And Garland in the early 90s was extremely old school, gruff. Our leadership was gruff, go put people's ass in jail, and some, former old crusty Marines were the leadership. And you would never have gone upstairs and been like, I think I need to probably take tomorrow off. that call screwed me up, and that you would not have said that. And now I can tell you, Chief Brian at Garland has been the tip of the spear of taking care of people no matter what he has to do. And the scare of, well, if I come forward, I'm going to lose my badge and my gun if I tell them I'm a little broken, and that has advanced so much. I can tell you the first call I ever went on in patrol by myself, 3-year-old kid, we pulled him out of a pool dead, and for years I could close my eyes and smell chlorine, and I would have never gone and told somebody. I almost quit the job for a bit after that, off and on. And looking back on that, I'm thinking, man, I could have gotten some help and navigated through that, but back then that was not the environment that you would have.
No. I mean, no, it really still isn't. I mean, we're still trying to change that conversation now and make it more of an infectious culture to but I will say now, and, Randy can attest to this, that the Assist the Officer Foundation, we provide the confidential counseling to officers, and all of our counselors are culturally competent, right? They understand the police mind because they have to. But we've seen like a 300% increase since the July 7th attacks. And I think there's incidents like that. I think that is a turning point, especially in this area, for people wanting to. I think every parts of the country, Baton Rouge, there's always something major that happens that gets people on a different course as far as understanding and recognizing that. Yeah, and that's nationwide.
It's pivotal, man. Like, anything for what it is. That what a tragedy that was, and to feel that sick pit in your stomach of wanting to come down to do anything to help anything is amazing. How that works out and kind of crosses all boundaries. But I literally was at a 2-hour training session yesterday with Dr. T with a bunch of people on our CISM team. Yeah. And ATO was talked about loud and proud by our captain over that unit, over that group. And, what you guys are doing and the turnaround that everybody's doing. So kudos to you guys and
Thank
to
you.
ours too. Like, I couldn't be prouder of our department for, like you said, being the tip of the spear. It's completely different.
I like seeing the view change, because early 90s we're all machismo, Garland PD, and former cops. And if somebody says, man, I'm struggling or I'm broken a little bit, you're like, oh, you freaking sissy, dude. You need to
go get a drink. Get a drink. Shut up.
And it was your week. And now I'll hear somebody step up and be like, dude, I got to get some help. I'm freaking screwed up. And now I'm like, that's pretty strong, dude, to be able to stand up and man up and say, I'm freaking broke, and it's okay that I'm broke. It's changed, and I know it's maturity probably and a whole lot related, but to go from that, what a freaking weak dude, to now I'm like, that's pretty badass.
That's a
That dude's
stronger
strong
dude for coming forward.
It's a whole paradigm shift. I mean, the whole mindset has changed on how to do it better.
Well, I've always been proud to say, hey, I want to give all the recognition to ATO, but I think it's all the officers willing to go out there and now admit, and if whatever the light bulb came on their head, that they were able to put themselves out there to get help and seek help. And I mean, it's like I said, my time here, it's changed so much where people are calling and getting it because they know they need it. And I don't know if it's because if it's these events that have happened, well, then that's a good thing, because those things are tragic, but there's all those little things every day you see over and over that you just compartmentalize. And I don't know how you do what you do with seeing the images and dealing with what you do, with knowing that you got to file that somewhere in your head to where you either forget it, numb yourself, and that's not the healthiest thing to do.
It's definitely a game changer. It's it desensitizes you to a lot of things, and I know now all over the station, in our everywhere, every wall, the elevator, everything. There's posters everywhere about how you can reach out and do this. When I was in the elevator once, I was reading this list. There was like 9 or 10, 11 things on this list. Like, hey, this, you might want to. And I'm like, holy shit! Like, I have like 9 of the 11 on that list. Like, I'm like,
I hope the door opens quick. I need help.
Yeah.
I was kind of commenting to somebody. I was like, man, I got a lot of things on that list. They're like, what? Really?
You're like, do I get a prize? Do I get a prize for this? Or I get like a raffle item. Clint, I want to segue into critical incidents. All right, and like Randy said, it's not the it's not the 7.7. It's not just the Baton Rouge. It's the small little things that keep the pinpricks that keep just jabbing you, and those
the kid in the pool.
Yeah, I'm looking at you when you're explaining that, just a physical reaction. It was slight, but watching you just talk about the kid in the pool, and how long ago was that? I mean,
25 years ago, probably.
It was 2.5 decades ago, and it's still, I could tell it bothers you, and it always will. You mentioned critical incidents on your bio, and you talked about one of your off duty with your partner. Are you comfortable talking about that to the listener? Can you tell that story and how that impacted you?
Yeah. So my partner and I, it was all Garland cops at a deer lease in West Texas. Partner and me and Tony were super tight, and me and Keith Prinz were super tight. We'd play the guitar together and write dumb songs and drink beer and play guitars together. November 1st, 2008, we were out at the deer lease. I had his son with me. I had been seeing more deer out of my deer stand. He wanted to hang with me, so we dropped Keith off. And a short time later, Keith came on the radio that he needed help and probably needed a helicopter. Had climbed up in his deer stand. We had huge tower blinds in West Texas that were anchored down by T-posts. Climbed up in the deer stand. When he opened it, hornets swarmed him and he fell, was impaled on the T-post. His son and I got to him. He had managed to lift himself up off the T-post, but was in pretty bad shape. I thought he was in bad shape, not fatal condition. His son was 13. I sent him back to get in my truck and go to the headquarters. Some folks came along in a truck and was going to drive us to try and get a helicopter. We had already called for a helicopter, and Keith died. We were in the bed of the truck, and Keith was laying on my lap, and he was kind of talking, and I was kind of joking a little bit. I said, we're going to end up in some trauma center out here while you heal up for 6 or 8 months, and we're going to be stuck in West Texas for the next 6 or 8 months and eating horrible food. And he took his last breath and died while we were discussing and joking. And first time I'd been exposed to, second time, I guess, having somebody die there kind of while I'm holding them. Pretty surreal experience. You're a control freak as a cop. I banged on the tailgate of the truck, got the 2 gentlemen to stop, was trying to do CPR, and they kept trying to pull me off of him, which I couldn't figure out why. Well, I wasn't listening to them. I had auditory exclusion going on. Well, they were screaming at me, trying to get me to listen, that they were off-duty firemen and paramedics. So when I let them take over, I took off running down a gravel road for a long time, don't know why. Started walking back towards the truck, trying to figure out why I just took off running down a gravel road. And then I thought, and I'm a super in control detective, I didn't really know what to do. So I got on the phone and called Garland PD dispatch and told them what I was doing. I was just, I don't know why I did that or why I called, but
he called me too, and
I don't even remember that.
It was like it was gut wrenching. And I'm like, well, what can I do? Like, it's going to take me hours to get to you. It's going to, I cannot get there quick enough. And I was like, stay by your phone. And I literally called a guy who we had assigned to DPS. And I'm like, I need to get somewhere fast. Can you get me up? And he was like, come on. He's like, we'll get it done. And it was a whole dynamic of everything, like trying to figure out how to get things together to help. Because like I said, Clint was there going through this with Keith's kid. It was gut wrenching.
What was your major concern with why did you feel any other than just to be there for your friend? Was there any other concerns you wanting to get there? And what were you going to do?
I didn't have a clue.
But you just wanted to get there.
I just wanted to get there. I just wanted
Our kids
to get
grew
there
up
to support
together. I mean, literally, our kids grew up together.
Yeah.
We spent every single day of our life. He and I did every single day of our life together. I don't remember calling him.
Yeah.
This is the first I've ever heard that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you're like, shit, I don't know. No idea what I'm going to do.
I don't know why I called dispatch. I was thinking about that when you and I were discussing it the other day, and I'm like, I called a lady, I realized I was screaming and crying, and she's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Lady, I'm a Garland detective." And it was bizarre, but and I went from being a control freak cop, I'd go to a homicide scene and I could be in charge there, and man, I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah, it sounds like we're so used to being in control, and then we know in dispatch that's who we call when we need help, when we're wanting assistance immediately. So I mean, that's
probably it. I guess when in doubt, scream to dispatch for help.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things, going back to what you were thinking, I can't imagine. But I know we put the uniform on, we're at work, we're one person. But then when it's off, we're out hunting, we're doing something different. I guess we don't have that protective attitude or persona on that we're used to. And then when it happens so personal, like your best friend, I can't imagine, there's no telling. I'm going to run back to Dallas. There's no telling, because I think it's a control thing, and we're so used to knowing what to do because it's not a person in blue or another cop or firefighter. It's some dirt bag or some poor soul that happened to get stuck in between something. And
it's a strange, it's different right now. I was talking to Doc Eastman and also Dr. Metzger about this on their episodes about they're surgeons, right? They see strangers all the time come through in front of them on a very controlled environment, in a well lit room, and they work on them. That's what they do. Doctors work on people, and we apply tourniquets. We try to save people. But when you have somebody that's so close to you, and these SWAT doctors, they got incorporated with these teams. They become friends. They're teammates, right? When they see a teammate fall right in front of them, I ask how did that feel compared to what you do day to day? Yeah. And it was different. I mean, it can't, the human side, you cannot not be different.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, because the doctors are talking about when Lieutenant Marshall got shot in the throat on a warrant, and they had to do triage on the side of the house and get an airway. And you holding your friend, I mean, God, I think about, I can't imagine that, Clint.
It was a weird time. It was a dark time. His wife asked me to speak at the funeral. I don't have a clue. I spoke there. I know that I spoke. I couldn't tell you what was said or done. I still thought he was going to make it. And when Care Flight was landed in the gravel road, picked him up, those guys were kind enough to drive me into the town 30 or 40 minutes away. And I still thought he was probably going to make it.
You didn't want to let go?
Well, I thought he's hurt really bad, but he's going to be fine. And when I walked in, they walked out and handed me his badge and his wallet and his wedding ring. And I'm like, man, why are you handing me these? Is he going into surgery? And they said, no, he didn't make it, man. He didn't make it. And I think it would have been different if I didn't have his son with me.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what to tell him or how to tell him. And is a weird, my coping mechanism through that has been, he and I were good time friends, like just play guitars, just laugh, goof off. We had zero serious conversations about life ever other than having fun. That was a Saturday that he passed away. That Friday, he passed away opening day of deer season, November 1st, 2008. That Friday, I left work and had gotten into it with a lieutenant that was a pretty bad micromanager. And I had announced that one of us was leaving Capers, and I knew he was new, so he wasn't leaving. So I knew that meant I was leaving. I was mad and called Keith and said, got good news and bad news. Bad news is I'm probably leaving Capers. The good news is I just left work early. It means we can head to the deer lease early. So as we drove to Abilene, I'm just raging and venting, and he's laughing his ass off. And I'm just getting smoking mad at him. And that was his personality. He never got mad. And he's laughing, and I'm raging, and the more he laughed, the madder I got. And finally I said, dude, you're freaking pissing me off.
You're making it worse.
And I said, why are you doing that? And he's just laughing at me, and he goes, man, you got two ways to handle life. You can worry about what you can control and control that. The stuff you can't control, you can let it go. He goes, can you fix this? I said, no. Can you change it? I said, no. He said, the wheels are in motion. Everything's going to happen. Whatever's going to happen, the lieutenant's not going to change. Best thing you can do is let God work it out, find some peace with it. Me and you have fun and enjoy what we got. And, I mean, he kind of didn't get on to me, but talked to me like a son or a big brother. And we'd never had those, never remotely had a conversation like that, where he kind of got on me a little bit and mentored me a little bit. And I didn't know 12 hours later he'd be laying in my lap, no longer with me. But that's helped me cope or try to find some peace with it, is that conversation apparently was meant to happen on that time frame, because we had never had any communication about church or religion, or him trying to guide me or give me a little, life help. Or that's been my one way to try and figure that out.
Tony, when you got there, you were affected too.
Well, I actually never even made it,
you never
because
made it? Okay.
the bird or the helicopter, I think it was a bird that was I think it got his wife there. It got somebody that needed to be there more than me. And like my game plan was, hey, I'm coming to get you. And then it was hours later, of course, and I was like, you don't need to drive home by yourself. I'll come get you. And then it was like, well, my truck's here. Like, what am I going to, who's going to drive my truck? I was like, well, we'll figure it out. That'll happen. And so many things were in motion. And even when that happened, I think I was running our association. So there was all kinds of, you kind of kick into overdrive, into, the fixer mode that we tend to get into. So it's like, we need to make sure everything else is in line. Like, what other family needs to get here? Who do we need to get to certain places? So much to my disappointment, even though I was headed that way, he's like, no, stay there. Everything's fine. I'll get there. Take care of the family. Take care. It was never a me moment for him by any means. It was all about Keith and all about his family and what needed to be done. So, and I called the guy from the DPS side, and I was like, hey man, we need to get somebody there, and it's probably going to be family and whatnot. So I'd rather you give it to them than for me.
That's one thing I'll say about our agency is every agency has their good things and their bad days and works through it. And I can tell you, Garland, rallying behind somebody when something happens, I've never seen a department lend support and the family lend support as you navigate through that. That's been a lifesaver. In the 90s, we weren't the best probably at acknowledging when we needed help, but we were damn strong at standing up and closing ranks around somebody when they fell or when they hurt or when they lost a loved one. We did that well.
Well, that incident, in our your bio, people have mentioned me sending out bios to people because that's how I outline these stories and kind of navigate. Because when I have people on, I look at this way. This is their stage to tell their story. Everybody's got a story, and I'm glad that Tony came here, was a part of this. That incident, something happened almost 9 years to the day prior to that, and I'm sure that triggers your life and it affects you. How did you cope? How at that time, how did you get through that? You don't even remember speaking at the funeral, what you said. I can't imagine doing that, Clint. Randy, I could not speak at his funeral because I can't speak when I get choked up. I'm going to have you speak. No, I'm not going to speak.
I'm going to have you speak and sing a song.
Yeah.
And dance.
Yeah. No, I can't. I couldn't do it. I would not be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to function. I know me, and you know, I'm more of an emotional person now than you know. 20 years ago, Randy, I could have easily spoke at it and even sing, but now I could not do that.
Are you still coping?
Yeah, I think trying to help others is my coping mechanism, actually, because I've struggled through a lot of it, and I'm probably the world's worst hypocrite because I beg people to try and get help, and I've actually used ATO. I've been to, because I was one of those that didn't want to use employee-related counseling, and I knew with you guys that there was not a chance of my confidentiality being compromised, but I've not done it when I should have. 9 years prior to that, I buried my daughter. Didn't never get any help through that. Should have, but I'm too dumb and hard-headed.
That's true.
9 years later, buried Keith. Didn't get help through that. But have at later times, you know, through different opportunities. But I would not use my handling of my business as an example for anybody in the police world. Or as an example of how not to do it is what I would use myself as. Because I think I could have handled decisions a whole lot better if I'd have gotten help.
Yeah, well, being in peer support and in the new wellness unit that I'm a part of, you have to have something in your cup, right, to give somebody else, because if not, it will drain you. I mean, and you know this, and if your cup is empty and people are coming to you for something, you can't give anything.
Yeah.
And at that time, did you feel you had anything to give? Or I know you probably tried, but
you know, when I buried my daughter, I did the immediate old school get right back on the horse. Garland was like, "Dude, stay home." Tony had people mowing my yard. He had people paying my bills. I mean, he had everything, and I was like, "By God, I'm going back to work. I'm going back to work." And I literally the first guy I stopped. The first guy I stopped, it was on a Thursday or Friday night. I went right back to work. I walked up to his car, and he immediately started MFing me. And the next thing I knew, I had him out on the ground and was on top of him crying. And a lieutenant pulled me off, and I don't know I think it was him. Mm-hmm. A lieutenant had him pull up and said, "I think you need to get him home." I'm not sure that he was ready to be back on this horse, and I had no business being at work. I had no business doing what I was doing, but in my head, by God, I got to get back on that horse and go.
It's like wrestling the keys away from somebody. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
really,
drunk.
when it comes to that, you need to.
What a great analogy.
Well, you know, I pull some things out of my ass occasionally, but it really because some people don't realize they're swerving over the road. Because I use that analogy too when I'm training the type of training that I do of the mistakes that are made in what I train in case filing that they don't realize that they're screwing it up that bad. Sometimes you got to like pull it away. Train them correctly, and it's the same with dealing with a peer. People are being resilient. The first part of being resilient is self-awareness, man, and that's the biggest thing, to be self-aware in yourself and to see.
Well, that went out the window with him during that, you know, and my wife and I walked through that whole situation with Clint and his wife at the time, and it was. Again, it's life altering, you know. As a parent, you think, how do you process that?
Yeah, I can't. I couldn't process that right now. I can't. What was your daughter's name?
Bailey. Looking back, listening to him talk about my then wife, the night she died, our police chaplain, Brother Ken, he appeared like a Casper. Like within 2 seconds after she passed away, he had telepathed right into the children's hospital and pulled me to the side, and he goes, "Hey, you know, losing children at this young age, the divorce rate's like, I can't remember, 80 or 90%. And And that's why I appreciate it, Brother Kim, but we're good. We're freaking solid. We didn't make it 6 months. And which is weird because to this day, me and her are like best friends. Me and her husband, her new husband now, are close. I spent July 4th with her husband and her parents at a lake house.
That's
so
great.
it wasn't had I handled it better.
Well,
it
it cuts
wasn't
both ways, Like
Yeah.
you guys were in different mindsets at the time. Like from the outside looking in, as close to you guys as we are and were. You guys were just on different paths with grieving and the trauma that you just had gone through, and you being stubborn ass that he is, and he is a stubborn ass, I'll tell you.
Hoorah.
Yeah, it's got that jarhead in him. But it was really, really difficult. It was.
Well, kudos to you, Tony, for being there as a friend and helping him do that.
I think that goes. He would have done the same for me if the roles were reversed. He would have done exactly the same for me under any circumstances. It's the ride or die thing. I know he would, and you just try to do what you can, but it's like doesn't ever seem enough.
I'll tell you one thing: being a good friend to somebody is super important. I teach about police shootings, and I talk about being a good companion officer and how important it is. And it sounds stupid. Oh, I'm a companion officer. I'm going to go sit. It's so important immediately after that trauma to have somebody that you trust, you're comfortable with. This is the guy, if I tell him, I just did something bad, he's showing up with a shovel to help me bury it. I mean,
that's my Randy.
You need that person. And Bailey dying and Keith dying, Tony appeared immediately afterwards. And one thing I was mad at him for a long time, after my daughter died, it struggled with my faith, and I had a lot of anger for a long time. Right before Keith died, I was in a pretty good place. I had really started to make the turn and was doing good. When Keith died, I was one mad, angry individual, and I thought I was doing really good. I thought I was killing it. And one day Tony called me and goes, "Hey, man, do you want to meet at a Starbucks in Rockwall?" And I'm thinking, sure, but you don't drink coffee. So we walk in, and he's sitting there with a guy, and I'm like, man, this is a freaking intervention.
It's
and
a
I
setup.
was so...
He was pissed.
I was freaking smoking pissed. And he goes, "Hey, man, we're just going to have coffee and talk." And I'm like, all right, let's cut through the chase. I don't want to hear about your life insurance policy or whatever. Let's cut to the chase, what we're here for. And it was a big old, nice-looking, strapping 30-something-year-old guy. And
Sounds hot.
he goes, "Hey, man, I played sports my whole life, wanted to play baseball. My whole life was baseball, and had a catastrophic injury in college that stopped me, and I was headed to the major, and I never stepped on the majors another day." And I'm thinking, dude, I don't care that you can swing a bat, dude. I don't care. And he kept on and was patient with me. And finally he said, "Are you mad at God?" And I was waiting for him to tell me, you can't be or you shouldn't be. And I freaking unloaded on him. "You're damn right. I'm freaking pissed, dude." I said, "I'm tired of people telling me, well, this is God's plan. Next time somebody tells me that, you can let him know that his plan failed me. It's not a great one." And all I remember is the guy sat up, and he's a big old dude. He goes, "It's okay. God's got big shoulders. It's okay." And that wasn't what the answer I wanted. I was wanting to freaking fight this dude. And he screwed my OODA loop up and told me it was okay that I was hostile and angry. And I didn't know what to do then. He took my freaking combat away from me. And so then
he disarmed you.
He freaking disarmed me because I wanted to freaking fight, argue. I wanted to scream and throw a damn temper tantrum, and it screwed my OODA loop up. Well, then I got to listening to him, and I hated him for that for a little while because I'm like, dude, you don't drink coffee. Why are we meeting at Starbucks, you freaking weirdo?
I love hearing that because I think sometimes we forget or we just don't know. A lot of people don't know. It's okay to be mad at God because because what good is it going to do to you carry around all that anger and not ever say anything.
And I
And once
wanted
it
to be
comes
mad.
out, and it probably released a pressure valve off you to where you were able to
Yeah.
listen and heal and move forward and get better. And that's
Yeah, they ambushed me and they deflated me because I just sat and listened in because I'm like, I was prepared to. I wanted to be mad. I was freaking pissed, and I was mad why I was doing this again, and I really wanted that guy to spar with me. And then when he told me it was okay and God's good with it, and the two guys sitting in Starbucks with me were good with it, I was like, well, shit, I don't even really know what to say. I guess I'm going to sit here and listen because y'all just screwed my freaking battle plan all up. And that helped me more than I can say. And I hope I would have been the friend to have done that for him, other than just said, let's go get a beer and ride around or go do something. I hope that I would have had the strategic planning, because that's important. Being a companion officer after somebody's had to take a human's life and you get a phone call to go sit in a squad car with them, go freaking be a good friend, man. That's what they need. Go ambush them in a Starbucks with the big baseball player, because that
Make sure you're strapping though.
yeah, that helped me. That helped me more than I can say.
Tony, I want to. What made you pick that guy, knowing Clint like you knew, knowing his personality, and probably knowing what he was? Once he found out, he probably knew how he was going to react, and he was going to be on the offensive. What made you think to do that, and why did you think that was going to work?
Honestly, it's where I was in my walk with Christ at that time of my life. I didn't grow up in a church. I didn't go to church as a kid. I'm not from a religious family by any means. If I went to a church when I was a kid, I was either at a funeral or a wedding. That was it. And so I didn't even know anything about that until I was well into my second marriage, and my wife was like, hey, this is what we do. And we go to church, and this is where our kids are going to go. And so I just reluctantly jumped in, and I'm glad I did, because I met two guys, Bubba being one of them, that was his name, Bubba, and Tim. And it was one of those two that would have been there. I wanted both of them there because I knew
I'd have been really mad if it had been two people ambushing me.
Stubborn ass was going to put up exactly what he did, draw a line in the sand and be ready to fight, which is fine. If you want to fight, let's fight. But we're going to get to the bottom of what's going on. And so it was just more like, he needs the help. Like, everybody's coming to me. Everybody's telling me. And I'm seeing it. And I'm like, you're not good.
Idea. I thought I was doing fine. And
everybody, like from the top down, get him right. Do whatever it takes. Get him right. Take the time you need. Get him right. And I'm like, I'm trying. I was like, he's Clint McNear. He's stubborn as all, like a fucking mule. Yeah. Right?
I thought I was killing it. I thought I was doing good.
No, he was not.
It's like looking at a fishbowl in somebody's life, right? You're on the outside looking in,
Yeah.
That ain't
And I wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
Like, having walked through that with him, when, I don't know, how many days? 10 days in the ICU? Like, literally spent 10 days in the ICU? Like, what the fuck? So it was crazy.
Yeah. But that's the bond of friends, though, and you really got to have that in this profession. You got, like you said, you need to have people that you can. A companion officer doesn't have to be for a critical incident. It could be just for the fucking dump of life and dump of this profession, because it's going to happen.
Yeah,
no matter what corner of the city you work at.
Yeah,
it's going to find you, right?
You're right about that. But to walk through that, and when they were going back to do the whole final process, and my wife and I just sat there, and they're like, his dad, he's like, get up, come on, where are you going? What are you doing? And I'm like, what? I'm like, no. I'm like, no. They're like, yeah, let's go. Rough.
Yeah. Clint, I want to get into you deciding to leave Garland PD and how that went, and what was that decision? When did you leave?
November 2013. Retired mid-November 2013.
Damn. Damn. Doesn't feel like it's been that long.
Coming up on 9 years.
Wow.
Why did you leave?
So I had 23 in our TMR in our system. My passion was working capers, and my dad worked capers at Dallas for 31 years. That was my passion, was to chase work whodunit homicides and robberies. Was just where I wanted to be. We had for a very long time a very senior, respected capers unit. Some things were changing at the time. Couple of us left. I went to child crimes, realized that I could not do that. I was struggling, and I was a hard charger. I wanted to run through brick walls, and child crimes turned me into the guy that I do not want to be at work. I don't want to be affiliated with these, and was, catching a couple of sexual assaults where it was mad stepchild that doesn't like the new stepdad, so I'm going to, make an allegation, and had to arrest a guy that I knew didn't do anything, and was just really struggling with a passion to serve. Had 23 in, and I realized, man, I'm 42, I'm going to have to do 15 more here, or I'm young and relevant enough that I can probably do 15 doing something else, maybe while I'm young and hopefully relevant. Bob Gorski's law firm reached out and said, hey, man, you need to consider expert witness work. TMPA reached out about bringing me on board. I asked them, what the heck is TMPA do? And they said, well, you train cops, fight for cops, fight to help cops. And I thought, I've lost passion to fight for people on the street. But if I can renew and find a passion to fight for cops, I was trying to find somewhere to find a fight to get back into, or to find my passion again. And it was a really good opportunity, and it all kind of came together. The short answer is, again, I got lucky and fell forward.
Well, it sounded like, did you become self-aware that the profession was not, at the time, not good for you in your mental health, your overall health?
Yeah, the pendulum was swinging in law enforcement, period. Starting in police work now with the environment it is, that would be the only environment you would know. But starting in the early 90s, when it was the Wild West, and the pendulum swinging to where it had, I knew that was rapidly changing. My passion was zero. I went from being a hard charger, wanted to run through brick walls, to crap, it's freaking Monday again, and I have to go back to that building again. And I wasn't mad. I wasn't sad. I wasn't dissatisfied with the agency. It was an incredible agency with incredible people. My daughter got a full police funeral. She got motor jocks. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better agency. But I guess I'd lost my passion and was trying to find a fight to get back into, and find somewhere to focus passion and be challenged. Being an expert witness has been really, really challenging, a fun challenge. And then working for TMPA, I travel the state, fighting for cops, and basically it's the DPA. I mean, I'm kind of a state version of the DPA.
Can you tell the listener what TMPA stands for, and talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, TMPA, Texas Municipal Police Association, started in 1950. We represent 32,000 cops across Texas, sheriff's departments, police departments, hospital, DART, DFW. We provide, our bread and butter is providing legal representation. That's the reason, like Houston, Harris County, and Dallas are not TMPA, because you guys have in-house legal. You don't need legal representation. You guys handle your own business in-house, so you guys are kind of a sister organization to TMPA. But ultimately, it's what you guys do. We provide training. We provide legislative efforts at the Capitol, very similar to you guys.
Yeah. We just went to the TMPA convention there in San Antonio, and you had some hellacious speakers, and it was really moving, the tribute that y'all paid to the fallen, the many fallen across the state and shit. That sadly, that reel of that was going up there on the big screen of fallen officers across the state is heartbreaking.
Yeah, our conference culminates into a banquet on Sunday night, and each year we remember the fallen from the previous 12 months. And although it's beautiful, I love planning it. I love getting to find some bagpipers or the piano player we had this year was awesome. I love getting to plan it, but I end up an emotional wreck the whole way through it as we honor it. And it shocks the conscious to see that many names and photos and young faces scroll across that screen every year. Shocks the conscious. I wish the community could see that every year.
Yeah, we Dallas PD had a couple of names up there. I want to get some final thoughts on state of mental and overall wellness in this profession. I want to get both of y'all's opinion on where you think it's going. We talked a little bit on it, but what do you think we could do more of, and what we can work on with the local departments and also at the federal level?
Wow. I think from my perspective, because I sit on the cusp of being able to punch out of here in a couple of years, sooner if the right thing came along. I've reached that level, but I've been a part of our core CISM team for, 7 or 8 years, and I've participated in that. And I'll tell you, I came into it. I didn't volunteer. I was voluntold because I was a negotiator on our SWAT team for a decade, and I really didn't. I was still of that mindset of like, suck it up, buttercup. But all the information I learned, and I educated myself about it, and I flipped. I did a 180, and I thought, well, shit, I wish this stuff would have been available when we were young bucks. I probably would have done things a lot different in my career. So from where I sit and what I do, I think there has to be intentionality. I think, one, it's easy to do when your administration is backed 100% to say, look, this is important to us. Your retention in this agency is important to me. And if we have to give you some time to figure that out through whatever resources, and you don't have to tell us a damn thing about it, then great. I guess I understand from the administrative side how maybe they know some people might use that as a crutch to, that's not for the right reason. But I think the goal itself is great. And so for us, there's constant intentionality. We have people who go pour through the shift report. If there's a major call that happens or anything of any significance whatsoever, someone's reaching out and saying, hey, do we need to put a group together to talk to everybody? Was it that big enough of a deal where we need to pull everybody, dispatchers, jailers, forensic people, patrol, whoever went, detectives? And I've done a bunch of those, and they're amazing. They're amazing because you see everybody, all the type A's come in, right? And it's all like, I'm not saying shit. I'm not going to do nothing. I'm just going to sit here because I was told.
Look at me when you said that.
So, just saying.
You gave a wink.
Yeah. But then when you see, as soon as one person talks, then the next person talks, and then the next person talks, and the spillover of that is contagious. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all for the right reasons, because your mental health is wickedly important.
Well, it's not only important just for giving the citizens a better product of officers. Yeah. It's like when Clint was talking about on the traffic stop right after that, he wanted to rip the guy a new one. It goes even up to that one was McKinney officer that answered like 2 suicide calls, and then he's caught on camera on that pool party. Yep. People are dealing with shit, and they're not. No, I'll say they're not dealing with shit,
right?
And they're getting caught up because of it. And there are going to be people that are. They're going to be people that are going to try to take advantage of whatever resource. That's human, and
right.
There's going to be some shenanigans. But I think that if you start a program and you get something out there that's proactive, not reactive, don't wait till somebody falls apart and then you're trying to clean up the mess, right, and mop it up. You're going to help more people than that are the few outliers are going to be trying to take advantage of or run a scam.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe from the federal side, and I don't really have a lot of knowledge to talk about that, but I would think dedicating specific funding
I think
for that,
education
and training and awareness and all of those things that go with it, because the field is ripe with lots of professionals who know a lot of stuff and can navigate you through those waters. Some of it still seems, because I'm so old school, I still think some of it is wizardry and hocus pocus stuff, in the sense of, like, we had Dr. Powers in our agency one time, and he was like, I could cure you of any issues you got. Like, who's afraid of spiders? And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'm totally afraid. I'm raised a hand. He's like, 20 minutes, I could have you holding a tarantula. I was like, sir, you've smoked crack, because there's not a chance on this planet I'm ever going to do that. And he's like, let me know if you want to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I can say I've never volunteered for that, though he has offered. He's like, I promise you'd be holding spiders and petting them.
I'm that way with snakes.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you.
Good to know.
Yeah, shut up. Dick. Clint, what do you think? And what is your mission going to be moving forward and continuing that message?
I think everybody trying to play their small role, because you don't ever know the impact you're having on someone. I challenge everybody to be intentional and decisive in what they do. Tony ambushing me at Starbucks over a latte with some big baseball player, knowing that I was going to be pissed. Man, the world could use a whole lot of that, because I was pissed even after it for a while that he did it, and now looking back, it was a huge pivot for me, and I would challenge guys to do it. I would challenge, you don't have to be a leader to make change. It doesn't take a lieutenant or a captain to go make changes. You have to talk about it. I'm a huge person in talking the stigma away. I spoke at our conference about 5 years ago in Houston. I just got up and had about 5 minutes at opening night ceremony and just said, hey, we've got to do better. We've got to be intentional. I was doing some work with the Brain Performance Institute here and just kind of spoke briefly, and I'm not educated on the topic at all. And clearly I have more baggage than Southwest Airlines, so I'm not here to help anybody. But I spoke briefly about it. Well, as soon as I get off stage, we're in the hospitality room, and this big strapping kid comes up and goes, hey, can I talk to you outside? And I said, yeah. And we're at the Westin in Houston, which is pretty tall. And I've got a Tito's, and he goes, I was just going to let you know that I drove down here today all day, and I intended to jump off this building until you spoke. And I'm like, let me set my Tito's down, because it sounds like you just said you're going to jump. He had worked a jumper Thursday night, and this huge kid starts telling me the story. He said, he was on a bridge. I had built great rapport, didn't know what I was doing, but I had stumbled through building incredible rapport. And he said at the 50-minute mark, he looked at me. His eyes had changed. He said he was empty when he looked at me, and he jumped. And he said, driving down here this evening, the whole time, all I could think out is he's probably got kids. He's probably got a wife. He said, so I Googled the height of the Westin while I drove down here and was going to jump until you got up and spoke. And I'm thinking, well, you came to the wrong dude, because I'm not the person to help you. So we get him help through the night and get him situated, and phone rings the next morning. Guy said, hey, I've been drinking, got my gun out, been drinking. And I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not anything professional. But them hearing a dummy get up and speak and making them feel enough that the stigma's not there. If that big ogre will get up and talk about it, then maybe I can go to him about it. Everybody has the opportunity to make a difference. Be intentional about it. Let the machismo and the alpha go, because I think there's a real opportunity to be intentional, be a good companion officer. Everybody has a part to play in this.
Clint, you say you're not anybody that should be looked at for help, right? And you may not have a doctorate, you may not have a therapist license, right? But you're relatable, and I think that's what people could take away in a message. And when we started up this, Randy knows why this podcast was started up, to give people a stage to tell their stories, and hopefully if they're not, at the very least, they're entertained, or they're just punching their steering wheel and they don't know what they're fucking talking about. But the feedback that I've received from people across the country, and from civilians and from officers and firefighters, actually, their message of hearing somebody on these mics, right, hearing their stories and how they reacted. I had an officer from Iowa that reached out with the longest email talking about he was involved in a shooting, and he believes because of what he heard from this podcast, he responded and reacted better when the guy got out and shot at him. Wow. And it was, and that, I mean, I actually called the man, and I had two other co-hosts call the guy that he mentioned liking their episodes. It meant a lot to him. It was something small. Being a peer, you don't have to be a good friend. You can just be a complete stranger, but be relatable. And Clint, I think you're that. I think that's what draws people to you.
I appreciate that.
Well, we always got to make sure we share our stories, because our biggest thing as men and cops, we think we're the only one, for whatever stupid reason, going through what we're going through. But until you start telling your story, you're going to find out other people have got so much information that they can share with you and experience. And I think it is, keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully people listening will want to come in and tell their story, and helps the next person pay it forward and pay it down the road.
It's cool you said stand up. I just joined a small group, a men's group, and it's all cops. But the guy that started is a retired homicide sergeant, and it's stand up men. And it's quit the machismo, quit all that crap. Let's stand up. Let's be men. Let's be dads. Let's be mentors. And it's weird you just said it's people need to stand up. That's what this group is stand up.
They do. I think that's it's important. It's important to get past the shield that we got to put on. We have to put on a mask and a shield to deal with people. We have to. Shit, Tony, we have to do that to be effective. But we also need to be effective for ourselves to know that is a role, but our bigger role is being who we really are. And if we're broken down, we need to fucking know we are and do something about it. And then thank God there's people like Tony and Randy's reached out to me on some of my issues, and I've bounced it back. And you got to have people like that in your life, and you got to let people know. At least even the most private person needs to let some people know that there are things going on behind the scenes that maybe they're not dealing with. Like Tony, you can look at Clint and say, I knew he was not well. He thought he was doing shit great. He thought he had it going on, but it was not. That wasn't the reality.
No, absolutely not. I mean, again, I think for the public's perception, a lot of times cops get the bad light of, they see the end result, like you mentioned, the guy McKinney who tackled the kid at the pool or whatever, but what the public doesn't understand is what he went through before that, or what happened at home, or maybe the other situations. Like, this stuff builds up, and you're just expected to go to the call and then guess what? Clear and go to the next one because it's busy. And so I'm grateful that the mindset is shifting, for the positive. So
in your podcast, I know people are coming forward because they're hearing it, and you're having people reach out. Man, that's touching lives. That's making a difference when you can get on here, spend an hour, share somebody's story, and sprinkle in the jokes and the cool war stories, but talk about the reality of being on the job. And then you get people emailing and calling, telling you what a freaking difference that can make, man. It's incredible.
Thank you. That it's motivation for me, and fuels me to want to do more. And Randy knows that I was thinking about wrapping it up. I was going to pack up shop, and kind of be done. But I'm going to continue to do more of these and learn from them, and actually meet some cool ass people like I've done today. Clint, you and I've met, but Tony, I've heard about you, and I've listened to your podcast, and I'm it's an honor to meet you, and I'm glad.
Appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you on here, and then really get to know more about you and all that you, and it says a lot about you as a person, of what you did as a friend. It really, that means a lot. It means a lot. You got a damn good friend here, Clint, and I'm glad. I'm really glad that you came on here to be a part of this. And and it wasn't just shoot the shit and jack with him. You show a different
I
side
could
of
still
yourself.
do that if you want.
No, we'll put that in the blooper reel.
No, I'm honored. I'm appreciative, and like I told you from the start, like I was just here to support Clint. Like I didn't want to come as a fifth wheel by any means, but we go through life and we know a lot of people. We call a lot of people acquaintances, but we don't have a lot of friends, right? We keep those really close to home. So
What's a trust thing? Right?
Yeah.
Clint, you're talking about you enjoying this podcast, and you and I, you reached out to me after the great Lance Crawford episode, and we had a long conversation. We talked about something that you're cooking up. Can you tell the listeners what you got in the horizon here that's similar?
Yeah, so TMPA, we're finishing up building our room for a vodcast, which you two guys are going to come on so we can do this again. And they can see how sexy you two guys are. Man. These will be in video.
I have a face for radio, really.
Can I be shirtless?
Okay, too late. Stop. You brought it up. See, folks, he always brings it up. I'm surprised he's not in a tank top right now.
Absolutely, you have to be now that you brought it up.
At least my pants stayed on. Or are they? You can't see.
But we should be up and running in a few weeks. It'll be TMPA, the Voice of Texas Law Enforcement, and it'll be similar to this, navigating issues and stories on the job and legislative issues and just kind of navigating as we go through. And I'm proud to have the support that you guys have, because I have no idea what I'm doing, and you guys have been an incredible feedback and ideas and helping me continue to fall forward and get lucky, and you guys have been incredible help, both of you.
Well, be careful what you ask for, because it is a undertaking. Let me tell you, man, you don't even think about some of the things that have to be done to get it to go and work, but it is work.
It's work, but it's well worth it.
Absolutely.
It really is. And you're going to see it, and Clint, once you start, you're going to be getting the phone calls and emails from complete strangers, civilian and sworn, and it's gonna fuel you. It's gonna make you feel like what you are going to do and what you are doing matters, and it means something. And it becomes your new why.
Awesome.
Yeah. And we're here. We're going to be here to help and give you any bad advice I can give you, because I'm full of that. So I saw your cool ass recording room you are putting up.
Doubt.
Oh my God, I'm jealous.
Me
Dude,
too, man.
Thin blue line. It looks badass. I'm
excited.
I'm pissed that we don't have something
Content
like that.
may be horrible with an ugly host, but the show's going to be sexy.
Oh,
the setting.
It looks good.
Yeah.
It looks
Joe, you don't
dang
like
good.
this room I've got for you here?
Yeah, you know what? We're gonna put up some cool movie posters or some other crap. But no, you got a great plan, and we're going to be here to help in any way. And man, thank you for being on with us today.
I'm humbled to be here. Honestly, humbled to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having.
One correction: it's 12 Frisco high schools, not 16. So if I get any emails or messages,
Okay,
I was wrong.
We
We're
will
fixed now,
get
so
some.
don't worry.
Yeah,
At least
just
you
12.
caught that. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have never even caught that mistake.
Clint, thank you so much for what you do for peace officers across the country. Tony, thank you for doing God's work and taking care of those families and those kids that they can't take care of themselves. Folks, once Clint's and TMPA's podcast gets going, I'm going to be promoting that and you know,
And on it shirtless.
and on it shirtless or shirtless, or have a shirt on but pantless. We'll see what time of the year it is for that. If it's cold out, I'm not going to be pantless. I don't want to.
Warm socks.
I'm taking donations to my Patreon now for me to keep my clothes on during that episode.
Okay.
So if you want me to be on there and stay clothed, donate to my Patreon.
Well, ATO is all about raising money too. Maybe we could get some people to fund Joe going shirtless.
That's right.
Oh God.
If it's in the winter, wear warm socks.
Yeah.
It's a padded room. You'll be fine.
Guys, thank you for listening. Go check out Catfish Cops. It's on all streaming platforms. Check out the sexy voice of Tony. And then once Clint's and TMPA's podcast gets rolling, we're gonna be pushing that out there and supporting them just like they've supported us.
I
Absolutely.
look forward to doing this again on ours.
Gentlemen, thank you guys.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, sir.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Hey, Mrs., hey, mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run. Up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.